Hello! It has been a while since I've done a video and just want to give not only an update but kind of a best of 2020 books. So I do plan to move forward with the channel. End of the year just got wild in a lot of ways, and then my life was super busy, and also just kind of was reflecting on kind of the direction I want to take it. I'm not so sure if the like 1 month recap style episodes is the way to go. I think I'm going to do more of a like one book per video thing, but not do every book I read in a month because some just aren't that notable, but just do individual reviews on stupendous books. And I think they'll be easier to find on YouTube, and I think they'll just spread and get around a little bit more. And I kind of oscillated between the ideas of like, do I do it with no spoilers, try to give information about the book in case you want to read it, but I don't know if that's the way to go versus the route of like dig deep, tell you everything, tell you what I liked about the characters, all that type of stuff, but you probably would have a little bit of spoilers in there. I think thinking about how I would like look for a book review video like that, I think it's after I've read it. I think I'm digging further into the book. If I want information about a book, I'm going about that real tentative. I don't seek information on books before I read them. So I guess if I look at the way I operate, the videos I should be producing are for after the book. So that's probably the way that it's going to go. I liked the 1 month style just because I was able to kind of talk in like the kind of ebb and flow from like one book to another. I kind of liked that in like 1 month there'd be kind of a diverse mix, but I just think like let the channel be diverse in more individual videos. So that is the plan. I'm gonna hold myself accountable. I think there's like a couple people following on here. Leave a comment, say, hey Joe, make videos, do whatever. But yeah, I wanted to come back on to celebrate the amazing books of 2020, not just books that were published in 2020, but the top 10 books that I read this year. I did read 9 books from 2020 this year. Just posted that little top 10 on my Instagram, but some of them you'll see in here. 2020 had some really good books. I have 3 from 2020 in my top 10. So this top 10, it is organized alphabetically by author. I did that last night. Don't know why I did by author, not book, but it's not ranked. I think the main reason that's difficult for me is nonfiction and fiction. To me, it's like having to rank albums and meals together. Like, I can't do that. Like, they serve such different things. And so, yeah, there's I think it's 50-50 of fiction and nonfiction. So some of these, if you've watched all the videos, first, thank you, that's incredible. But you may have heard some of these reviewed a little bit, but there were some months off, there were some months before I started, so I think a lot of this would be new, and also just kind of wanted to, I don't know, talk about some of these books a little bit more, because they deserve more talking. So, first one, Rise of the Warrior Cop. Obviously, big year for police brutality and needing to change that system, and so I found as things were ramping up and I wanted to get more involved, whether that was out in marches or in conversation or online in discussions, whatever it was very hard to not let my emotions get the better of me. And what kept me grounded was information, and not just, I have a stat to repeat. It's understanding how we got to here and knowing that shouting isn't going to dismantle it. It's that we have to see what led to this. You know, we didn't always, it wasn't always like this. You know, but cops used to walk the beat. They used to be part of a neighborhood. Things changed when they got militarized, and you can see that play out over the years and decades, and see that transition to where they're in their armored cruiser, very much away from everyone. It's us against them, where before they were integrated, and it's a tricky thing between like the abolition and reform, and I fluctuate between it, to be honest. Like, because the one quote in this book that really rings out to the point I'm mulling over right now would be, Cops are a necessary evil, but more evil than necessary. And that's kind of where I'm at now, where everyone's at now. But I'm still wrapping my head around abolition, where I see a complete redesign, like, and once you take out mental health and drug addiction and sex work and all these things that they don't need to be dealing with, what's left, is that essentially a complete abolition of what is, and now it's something new? So this book allowed me to see more clearly what police are doing effectively and what they are not. And another kind of companion piece to this would be The End of Policing by Alex S. Vitale. That kind of broke it down more in categories and a little bit more. The book came out a couple of years ago as if it knew sort of what was coming on like the defund police, because it really broke it down into the various sections, you know, from gangs to borders, sex work to drugs to all these different areas where it's like maybe an armored cop isn't the best person in this. And so it's like, wait, if we had more departments and more things, some of those resources coming from police divided up into more specialized teams, we could have it. But then this book kind of makes me wonder, like, can that institution that exists now be walked back? And I don't know. It's a really tricky thing. And I think almost my bigger worry with changing police so much, or the idea of abolition, is that all of these angry, displaced men, mostly, how do you rehabilitate that? Like, how that mindset that there's toxic things in there, and it's not just racism, it's a whole mentality. And I don't know that saying you're not a cop anymore, find a different job, changes them enough. And I think we're going to be left with a lot of very disgruntled people, however this shakes out. But I think obviously what's working right now isn't, and we need systems with more care and on both ends. And I lean towards abolition. It's hard to see something this toxic be reborn. So this book helped me to better understand, helped me to be more level-headed in conversations when it would be very hard to not spike, and it is such important things. And I mean, you can go down the list of all the examples, all the things that make it heart-wrenching. It makes it difficult to have these conversations, especially when then there's other things tiled in, like racism and socioeconomic structures. But this book did a very good, very level-headed, not anti-cop, not pro-cop. He's not left, he's not right. It's just, this kind of a history. Do with that what you will, but you take stock of this. And that made that book so powerful to me. I do believe he was putting out another edition, because this came out in 2014, where now obviously so much has happened, and I think it's like 3 extra chapters and maybe some expansion or intro and stuff. But so the reason I bring that up is if you get this book now, you'll have even more updated parts in it, which is how it went with another book that I read, that I'll get to here in a bit, where the updated parts really helped. And I really do recommend that book, not just because 2020 you should be reading about cops, everyone needs to know more about this. Radley Balko did a fucking incredible job there. It's so much information, but it's not just like history book, like no narrative, like, oh my God, I got every cop fact. Like, it really lays out the narrative very well. And to go along with that, if you're on Twitter, his Twitter account is really good. He posts very good articles. His commentary on things is very sharp. He doesn't get into petty arguments. I truly don't even know which way he falls politically. Like, he's just very straightforward, like, we need to redefine law enforcement, and not on the brash, like, it's 2020, I'm now very interested in law enforcement, we need to fund it. He's been in this, he's years and years, and so I really see him as a very sound voice in something that gets very conflated. So building off of the books that go along with 2020, this was fiction, but if you're seeing any best of the year list, this is probably on it. The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I've gifted this book once. I've recommended it once. Both people came back big on that one, and like, I just literally today her other book just arrived, Mothers. This, if I had to say like one novel that defined 2020, this would be it. It not because of it's about race or anything so simplistic as that. It rolls together so many threads, and it does it in a really beautiful way where it's not force-fed like here's a trans story, here's a race story. Like I've just never read anything like this in the sense that it was so current but didn't feel wrapped up in current events. If I'm explaining that correctly, where I feel like I learn more about the people who live these lives rather than like quick assertions on like the surface. And I felt like it deepened my understanding not only of what a trans person's experience is, but colorism, both, you know, someone who is very dark or one who is light skinned, and the nuances between that. There were a couple books this year where it kind of expanded my understanding of colorism. Frying Plantain was another one. But yeah, this book, it didn't get, how do I say it? It felt so universal that it didn't feel like it's, I need to better understand race or I need to do this and this is a novel that goes along with it. It was like just all the emotions in one, but then just very timely. And it came out in February 2020. Obviously, she couldn't have known how the rest of 2020 would transpire, but it's like she had a magic ball. Like it's a perfect book for this year, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. Of the books I read that were released in 2020, probably my favorite. The other contender would be one of the last books I'll go over here, but yeah, I just saw she actually has an interview with Trevor Noah on Daily Show that I need to check out. But yeah, anything of hers, sure, her voice was just so sharp in this, and there's a line in it that I really like, just because the book kind of seemed to express universal feelings in a way that helped bring people into narratives that may feel very different than their own, but still you see that universality in it. So the quote that I really liked was, "The world looked differently than he'd imagined. People you loved could leave, and there was nothing you could do about it." And I think that speaks to some of the, I don't know, just love and relationships are. Like you have this narrative in your head, like, all right, this is how it's going to be. And then someone's like, no, I'm doing it differently. Oh, well, that's my thing. And just recognizing like how delicate relationships are. And like there's all the trust and everything there. But yeah, there were just so many lines in the book that just gave me pause and allowed me to really like take a breather, absorb, and just like not just get sunk into the plot, which I think would probably be my biggest struggle if I ever tried to write fiction, was that I would want the plot to be so consistent or thorough that I would lose some of the broader spectrum things. But I think she had her overall themes very much in mind as she unraveled the narrative, and then lines would come in that really supported her. And yeah, it's just an incredible book. I'll definitely be doing a video on Mothers when I read it. So next book here, no surprise, I got a gut health book in here. Fiber Fueled. First off, I'll say it looks kind of like a corny book that you don't want to get. Like I don't know, in Fiber Fueled and like some of the things seem a little bit like, I don't know, one of those health books. And I think he is enough of a gut health nerd and doctor and things that he could write those straight up medical books that always kind of look like this, just a white cover, bland text and stuff, but knew to get it popular enough, which is what gut health deserves at this point. So I think he did with this book what I see Michael Pollan as having done with How to Change Your Mind. That it brought a subject that within certain niches is groundbreaking, and people are recognizing it, but I think some people are still like, yeah, it's weird, it's vague. And he's like, it's not vague, pretty clear. And lays it out, and it's so good and it's so absorbable. Like there's some like 10% Human was when I read this year, and it's really bit way in on like the I guess they're all on the microbiology side, but then like some get very narrow. Like Mind Gut Connection was so much about the vagus nerve, where this is all around, and not just of your nutrition, but your body, the past, how things have changed. Like it rolls so many good things in there, to the point where if someone is like, hey, I want to read about gut health, that's probably the book I'm going to give them. The runner-up would be Human Superorganism, and if I remember correctly, that book was a step or two more advanced, I would say, where you could come into Fiber Fueled knowing nothing about gut health, and you'll leave like, got it. Like I have a very good sense of what my actions are doing to my insides, and like it's just very well done. Gives you enough supporting information where you feel like, oh, I didn't just learn 3 things that I'm repeating. Like I understand how those systems work and why they work the way they do, but doesn't overload you of like, you understand all of biology, right? Like it's paced out very well. Another one, just like Radley Balco, where his not Twitter on his, but his Instagram account is very solid. But just some of the stats from this book getting pushed out, and little infographics and quotes and stuff, where it kind of keeps the story going. I really like that. And after I read the book, really appreciated his account more, because I was like, oh wow, yeah, you basically wrote this whole book, and now you can just continue to kind of like take pieces out and disperse it and get that message out there in whatever ways you can, whether that's Instagram lives, which he's doing like all the time, and then like posts and interviews and stuff. And it's just like he's doing all the things, and I feel like it would be easy to look at someone like him, like Dr. B is what everyone calls him, Dr. Beluskiewicz or something like that, but I'll call him Dr. B. I feel like he's taken that step forward and like putting himself in the limelight, and someone say it's like wanting to be celebrity. I see it as not. It's like you have to go through those processes to do the stuff, and he's taking gut health forward, and that if it's done in a corny way at times, like, so be it. I'll take it. He's doing important work, and that book really just laid it all out in such a clear way. So it's nice to have a book like that, whereas if someone had asked me before, like sometimes I might almost said like 2 books, or like this plus it, or like this if you read, and then if you really like it, this one too. But like this, there's just kind of everything in one. If you read that and you're like, I want more, I got you. But that's probably the best one to start. So yeah, you see that cover around, Fiber Fueled, might look like a corny book. It's not. I don't know why I think it's corny. Not my favorite cover. One cover I really did like, and I actually did a long post about this on my Instagram in February, because I read it all in like one day, because I was just like absorbed on it. Invisible Women. And what I don't know if you can get on the cover, oh yeah, I see some of the highlights. So there's like printed in white, but Invisible Women on there. So this whole book, Invisible Women, Caroline Corrado Perez, it is about, like the byline says, data bias against women. And so what it showed me absurd amounts of disparities. So like things from the way that like car safety is designed, all of it is structured around a man's body. Prescription pills, everything is formulated for men. Everything is done men, and then women get the men's version. And there is so much like that. Even snowplow routes where they're clearing paths for men to get to work, not pushing stroller, not sidewalk, not predominantly where women walk, maybe getting groceries nearby. Like everything is, first we have to get people to their work, and then this, and there are just so many things in there that like lay it out of like the deck is stacked against women before the game even starts. And it's not just in like, oh, misogynist people in offices or trying to get paid the same. It's like, holy, why is this even a thing? Like, just everything is so stacked against it. Like, I just couldn't believe it. And so she has one other book, Do It Like a Woman, who I definitely plan to have on my 2020 reading list. But yeah, again, kind of like Radley Balco, where it was so much information, but not an overload. Like it was laid out very well. And like I've read some other books that kind of hit on the feminist thing, and sometimes you get senses that there were grudges or little thing where like this one I'm really fired up, but like I didn't get that so much with her in a really good way, where it felt like I'm laying out this data. How could you see it other ways? Like if you say here's the stats and I'm fired up and it, well then it doesn't hit as hard. She's like, here's the data backed by this. What do you think? And it's so good. So it's good. It's heartbreaking at the same time because it's I've such small ability to change most of these things, and that it sucks to read something and you're like, oh wow, there's all these things. Me, I'm like I could join the bigger campaigns, I could do these things, but like my hands aren't gonna do it, and that's frustrating. But yeah, really good book. I feel like every guy should read it. I don't know, like I feel like as a as a woman, like it's probably more heartbreaking for a woman to read that. Like I feel like most women are already on the side of feminism where they don't need more fire, and I think some guys need to understand a little bit further, like, yeah, it's harder in a lot of ways. It's not like, oh, guys' arms are stronger, life's easier. Like, there's hundreds and hundreds of fundamental ways where it's different. And so, like, yeah, very, very good book. That came out in 2019, so pretty recent. Which I'm finding I like to read a lot more contemporary stuff. That's something as I kind of look at my 2020 years, or 2020 books, I think maybe it was needing a little bit more comfort or ease this year with language, but I just, both in movies too, I found I was wanting contemporary stuff. Like I use that Criterion channel sometimes and I'll watch like oldies, but then there's some nights where it's like, I want something of this era because I feel so in it. Like we're so living this life right now. But yeah, one of the best nonfiction books I read this year. Just blew me away. I'd never been so compelled to like write about a book afterwards. This is pre having a YouTube channel, but I just like wrote out this post like, I just finished this book. I can't just like go on right now. I gotta expand, do something. And so yeah, that book is incredible. Another book that I'd seen around for a while, always wanted to read it, but then it was Jared Bartman who finally like hit me. He's like, I just read this book, knocked me dead. Like, all right, I'm getting it. All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This is kind of the classic, like telling two stories that weave into one, and it is World War II, which I'm generally not a big war book guy. I don't know that I've read any war books. I guess For Whom the Bell Tolls. Kind of war-y. Yeah, not a lot of war stuff. Fifth Mountain by Paulo Coelho, sort of, but the two stories, I don't know which story I liked more. There were two incredible stories, and it was both very young people, and I liked that because the age it had them at, basically starting at like 6, and then like early to like preteens, where when, you know, looking at that World War II, looking at the rise of the Third Reich, any of us now in hindsight would say like, I would have rejected that, like, but you see the path that these kids get in, and that to rebuke it would be very difficult, and the way that they're sort of coddled into it. Like it's two kids, and basically there's a boy who's very good with radios and sort of gets enlisted in this, like, oh, you can do this, we're going to give you this special project. And they sort of, I love radio. I don't necessarily like what I'm doing, but they speak very kindly to it, and he gets posed as like this hero. And how do you turn away from that? And so his story is one, and then the other is a blind girl. And I have never read the narration of a blind person's experience. Oh my Lord, like, let alone the fact that it's happening during World War II, but I don't know how you can write something so, say, accurate as like in a sensory level, like, but man, I felt like, it was a very good portrayal of what she was experiencing, and then to see those two stories kind of both have reason in this bigger story it was all pulled together so well. I think he's mostly done short stories. I think this is his second novel, About Grace being the other novel. This is from 2014. Another one, About Grace, on my 2021 reading list. 2021 reading list getting very full as it like, we start plotting 2022. But yeah, I thought this book was going to take me so much longer. It's so big, and but it really flies fast. If anyone read Holes when they were a kid, where there was like 78 chapters and they were super small, there's a lot of like small chapters in here, and for some reason, it helps me like, oh, I'm chugging through this thing, and like, yeah. So it's not that I want to blaze through books, but it's just the idea of a very big World War II book to me was like, I don't have a lot of interest there, and then like trying to see more good reviews, and then like the best thing possible is that a friend is like, I read it, it's good, trust me, like I'm in. So Jared Barnes has been a very solid book companion here, and yeah, you'll probably hear more recommendations from him on here. One of the first books I read this year that I knew instantly was like, that's going to be in the top 10, no way that's getting dethroned. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, MD. And this is all about trauma. I genuinely feel like this book is the reason we hear the word trauma 10 times the amount that we do or we did a year ago. It's just staggering. Like I always thought of trauma, I guess it's not to say that every person now has like their own massive trauma that we all like, that it makes it a commonplace thing, that everyone has their own unique stories, but you just realize how affected so many people are by various things, and then the language that kind of goes along with it of, I guess, kind of makes me think of some men in my life who are maybe don't feel a need to talk emotional at all, don't feel like they ever have to vent anything, and I find in conversation they don't seem to think they need much like buffers, or like they can just say things, and it's like, you know, some people need a little padding, and I think this book helped me to realize, like, just because I may be very sure-footed at times, or feel like I can just kind of keep moving here, like there's times where some people, because of what they've been through, just need a little, I don't know how to say this, like, in your speech, you don't know how abrasive things could be if you're not that sensitive. And I think as we recognize other people's delicacies, then our language softens a bit. And I think that's important. I think we a lot of us can see a shift in language over the last couple of years, being much more non-confrontational, and I think it's good. It's important, but I see this as sort of like the foundation of why we're talking like this. Because remember, like, and you have no idea what someone's stories could be. Like, their whole life, everything you know them could be pure joy, but when they were 3, something else happened. And like, you don't know. And I think the book not only helped me to better understand how to handle like communications and things like that, but then also just recognizing like the impacts of trauma, not just like the big, you know, more understood things, but like the subtleties and the way that they play out. Yeah, this book really just kind of like stopped me in my tracks, I'd say. It almost gave me a little bit of worry, like how a WebMD might, of like, oh God, I'm traumatized. Am I like, and like, I know I've gone through my own shit too, but like, yeah, you realize how severe some of this stuff is, and that we're in a society that doesn't allow you to recognize it. You just keep going. Okay, doesn't matter, keep going. Like, and so I feel like this helps to give space to let a little bit more healing happen in our society, where I don't think we allow adequate time now, and then that's kind of a forever problem, where I think if we got better at processing as things are developing, or quicker after they happened, like, onward in life, there wouldn't be so much pent up strife. But yeah, this book, I will say I read it in January, so I don't have the super sharpest memory of like how the chapters went and stuff, but they're all broken down very well, and it just, yeah, that's just some good human stuff. Like, there's no human unaffected by this. I mean, it goes into the like generational trauma of like where, people who had gone through the Holocaust and survived, their offspring, and then even their grandchildren at that point, seeing genetic markers on their DNA, that trauma impacted them to such a degree that it changed their DNA. And then you see the next generation, they have that. Next generation less, but still has some. And so you realize that generational trauma, looking at things like Holocaust, slavery, there's generational trauma still instilled in people. And we're in a society that doesn't recognize it. It's like everyone has to be treated as equal or considered equal, even if some people have a hardship that we're not acknowledging. And that makes society really unfair. What's new? But yeah, I think this book, how deep do I want to go here? I've spent a lot of time digging into myself inward. A lot of the most challenging things in my life happened around age 9. I have spent a lot of years not thinking about that, avoiding it, and then I spent some years, all right, I'm digging into this, and I feel like it was good for me to have read this book after that, because it allowed me to have the insights be for others. And so, whereas I think if I was still going through my stuff, I would have seen this more for me, like, and how, oh, this is how I feel, this is what I'm going through, you understand me, where I'm just saying, this is everyone. And so I feel like this book came to me at a very good time as well. My favorite book of the year. P-Cal, A Chemical Love Story by Alexander Shulgin and Anne Shulgin. It is a thick boy, but I will tell you, most of the back is just recipes, hardcore chemistry. So, why is this my favorite book? This is a love story. So, all right, jokes aside, Alexander Shulgin invented more psychedelics than any human in history. The stories in this are on another level. So let me explain what this book is. And I am animated right now because I love this book. I love Alexander and Anne, all the work they've done and the substances they've created. So this tells their stories intertwining, where basically they didn't like connect right away. They basically, like, he was dating someone, Ursula, who lived in Europe, and it's like, I'm coming back at some point, I'm gonna come back for you, and he's like tied up in this thing, and she comes up and is like, I like you a lot. He's like, okay, but just in case, I mean, I got this thing. So they kind of start getting together, and she's like, I don't think this Ursula thing's happening. I think she's playing you. And so kind of that rolling out, but they connected. So I think they met at a party, and she says, so what do you do? It's like, I create psychedelics. She's just like, what? Like, so this man, for reference, this book is titled P-Cal. That is an acronym for phenethylamines I've known and loved. He has part 2, which I'll be reading 2021, T-Cal, tryptamines I've known and loved. But just to give you a sense here, on the phenethylamines, these are the ones that he pioneered. If you can see all of these, like, all those, D-O-B, B-O-D, all the letters, every letter of the alphabet. It's alphabet soup, 2CB, 2CAT, all of them. Yeah, here are all these. How did he do it? You might ask. So, what a lot of this book is, are stories from the weekend that he had a group of research friends or a research group that once he had discovered a substance, he would test it out on himself in small amounts, building up and up until you go, oh, that's a dose. Understand it, and then have a group of 10 friends over for a weekend, land out there, and so, you know, this is the substance, this is what it's like. I have found that half a gram is a full dose. A little bit more than that, be it. If you want a booster an hour later, that will extend it but not elevate the dose. And everyone would pick their amount they want to do, all engage in the same substance, and then write reports afterwards, dig into it, and analyze it. And he vetted dozens, if not hundreds, of psychedelics that way. Some of these now are massive tools for therapy. Every year, exponentially, you will hear the word psychedelics more and more. Now, some of these might not be considered straightforward psychedelics. MDMA is that kind of like on the fence one, in my opinion. But there's no way to quantify the amount of not just joy, but healing and enlightenment that his substances can bring or will have brought humanity. And it's only going to grow more and more. He's since passed, but MDMA therapy is blossoming right now. And every soldier who's getting that PTSD treatment, anyone who's getting this MDMA therapy, I think something big that's going to come with it when it's a little bit more accessible is couples. Read, I forget what book it was in, but there was a couple who said, you know, we use MDMA once every year or two. We go out to a cabin, we take a little time, just us, not the kids, and just work on our relationship. And when you take MDMA, as some of you may know, your language flows very easily. Not in the drunk sense, no, any words that come out of my head are coming out. It's all those things you feel that you don't articulate, time to articulate them. And it makes it very easy to. And you can express your love fully. You find the words. And that's important, especially in a relationship where maybe one person doesn't communicate as much. It's like, hey, we're going to hang out, open the floodgates, all the words, all the feelings. Let's make sure we're on the same page here as we go forward. And I do see that as a big benefit to couples therapy. And I hope to see more of it. If I'm in a relationship, damn well, I'll be instigating MDMA therapy. His substances are not like alcohol. They are not like any prescription pill like that. They allow the mind to grow. And he takes humanity forward. And in this book, they really dive into the substances in a way that makes them seem... they're nothing to be petrified of. You know, like, be rational, be understanding, but it shows how little we know about drugs, alcohol, cannabis, and then all the bad ones. But it's, God, there's hundreds out there. And you might, like, everyone likes alcohol, everyone likes caffeine. But there's others that you like. Like this, and this just opens the door to that, in my opinion. So, obviously, if you can't tell, I love drugs. I am sober from alcohol for years. I have things I do and things I don't do. And this book highlights some things that I would like to do, or do. And I think it's the type of writing that just had everything for me. It had mystery, it had romance, it had science, it had culture. This book just rolled everything in together in one. It was beautifully written on both of them. That was kind of a nice thing of it too, is that unlike All the Light We Cannot See, that's 2 stories, 1 author, this is 2 stories, 2 different voices that weave in, and you see one collective experience. It's incredible. More love stories should be written like that. Like the guy and the girl, like how we met. Little stories about back and forth. What were you seeing? What was I seeing? I was feeling this. Like, it's just a great way to tell a love story. But then also just like, some chapters it'd be like, you know, oh, this is what we were doing this time. And then other times like a chapter would just be like 2CT7. And this is our weekend exploring that substance and everything about 2CT7. And it just, like, it was just so over the top, like bombastic. It just, yeah. I remember reading Aaron, a very short book by Frederick Dickinson. I I don't know, someone from a psychedelic press where it's this the story through a festival, and it was some of those things. It was like, God, I love festivals, I love all this stuff, but you don't hear good writing on it much. Like you don't like. So he was able to bring back some ineffable experiences into literature in a way that I don't think has been done since Aldous Huxley, and we're all better off because of it. So I will be reporting back on TCal. I'm already excited. Like I'm trying to decide when to read it. Like I'm literally like, do I save it for my birthday? Is there like some vacation? Like, yeah, that's the most excited book I am for 2020 and 2021. All right, bring it back down. 2020 is a serious year. So, like a lot of people, read more books on race this year than I have in the past. I wouldn't say it's a subject that I'd been avoiding or ignorant to. Still love me some James Baldwin. Still had been digging into it, but this year a little bit more purposeful. What I think the two themes that I found that I saw in race literature, if we'll broaden it like that. I wanted to know more of the Black or brown experience and history, I would say, and not history in the sense, oh, it was worse then, now we're better. Seeing things play out over generations, trajectories where we honestly might be going or not. It helped to give me a better sense, and the book that seemed to kind of merge those two the best, because so many. I don't know what to say. I was going to say so many get wrapped up in more immediate social things, but I think there's some books who just I learn more from these books than books that incite just guilt or just surface level 2020 issues. Like broad scale systemic race, like that's what I'm wanting a better understanding of. And this book did it. Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria by Beverly Daniel Tatum. It was written about 20 years ago. This is the book that, as I mentioned during Rise of the Warrior Cop, this had an amendment 20 years later. Obviously a lot has happened in those times, and so it was nice to get this kind of buttoned up in there. But this really, as you can guess from the title, it's more about kids. I guess I'll just answer the question of the title, and that would best explain the book. So, why are all the kids sitting together? Why are all the black kids sitting together in the cafeteria? It's because they've experienced the same stilted opportunities. Their hardships have been similar. Their handlings have been similar, and that's something where, whether you take a black and a white kid, all the same interests, all the same hobbies, but fundamentally, emotionally, you're a different being. That's what it is. It's that otherness. That's the word that came about a lot in race literature for me that seemed to encapsulate it, was otherness. And that your life is always in relation to white lives. That you're not the main character. That you're other. And that affects a mind more than I could have ever imagined. And I no, it's not that I thought it was a small thing by any means, but I didn't think of it. I think about my own things. I think about how I'm different. I understand black kids would have a different experience than white kids, but this allowed me to better understand. I will never understand black experience. I'll do the best I can, but this book was so grounded and so well researched, and I think because it's older, I feel like I connected with it more, where there were some more modern books about race where like we're all pissed off, but sometimes it was just heated, and it's hard to get a message when there's animosity coming along with it. There should be animosity. There's no reason a black person should ever be nice to like anyone explaining what they've been going through. It's been hard as fuck, and she somehow kept it so composed in this book, especially when you're talking about kids. Then, like every argument gets heightened on that level. Like she did an incredible job, and it's probably the number one book on race I'd recommend to anyone. It's not the easiest one. There's easier books out there to read, cooler covers and all that stuff, and authors that are getting all types of talk right now. But honestly, I learned more from this book than just about anything I read this year. So that's a really important one to read. I realize I've said that about every like nonfiction one so far, but that was a key book for my 2020. One I was looking forward to all year, since reading his first one in March, so most of the year. The Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Turton. This was a tricky one to decide because I couldn't decide whether to put this or 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, his other book. I read both of them this year, the year I became a big fan of his stories. And that is a tricky distinction to make because I posted the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle saying I loved it. Friend followed up later, Jared Bartlett, it's like, I mean, the story is very good, but he has some lines in there that are just whack. And I don't remember that so much. He screenshotted me a couple. I was like, okay, yeah, that's a corny line there. But I think I was so awestruck by the story that it just worked. And then the follow-up to it, Devil in the Dark Water, no connection between them, just very mysteries on a similar scale, I'd say. And I feel like the writing's cleaned up a bit, and there's less unnecessary things in there, but it's not so like, here's the plot. Like, there was a lot going on in it. There was enough red herrings where I felt like, oh, I got this. No, I don't. I'm way off. Like it kept me guessing in a fun way. I always think to like Sherlock Holmes is the type of mysteries that I don't like. Truthfully, where you get to the end of one of those, and I'll say honestly, I haven't read one of the books. That this is all based off of like hearsay, and then also like the Sherlock Holmes series. So, but I will say those solutions or the ending, no human could get that. Like, it doesn't even make sense. And so there, you get to the point at the end of those is like, here it is. It's like, oh, well, it could have been anything because rules don't exist, and he's a superhuman. So this kept it very, like, there had to be an explanation for everything. And it was so satisfying, and it was so good, and I did not know how I was like 50 pages from the end in a, like, 450-page book, and I was like, I have no clue how this is going to end. That's the best. The worst thing in a mystery is when, say, you have 80 pages left and you just got the ending. Now we just got to wrap up loose ends and I'm done with it. Like, oh, that's the worst. Like, I love the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo books, but there was one of them that had that at the end of it where it's like, you're giving me just, this should have been before the end because I'm done now. And like, so this did a very good job of like holding you in until the very end. And like, oh, it was so good. If you like mysteries, there's got to be some term for it, like a contained mystery. I feel like there's some literary term that I don't know, but like mysteries that are like, it's on an island. There are these 19 people here. This is it. Or like this, it's on a boat. These are the people. Like that, I don't know, where you can get your head around it, where it's not like, okay, anything in the world can be happening. It's like, it has to be within this realm here. And not a bullshit, like, it's these 19 people. Oh, guess what? It was someone else we didn't even tell you about. Like, no, it's real, it's there, but you gotta dig and like, oh man, it's so good. So I love good mystery books. Probably first book I'm gonna read of 2021 actually came to me because of Stuart Turton, now that I think of it. So I was obsessed with 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. It was just a super surreal book, and it was very difficult for me on this to decide which one of those two to put in there, because while I would say this is a better book, better written, and not by huge leaps. I didn't have much grievances with 7.5. But the tricky thing is that, like, so seeing both these two on my shelf, when I see the spine of 7.5 Deaths, I have a bigger reaction. Now that was the first one, so there's that, and then this is the like more well done one. So by technicality, better book, and so I included it in here. But genuinely, I don't know if it was just that like I hadn't read a contemporary mystery like that ever, and so like I was just so blown away because not only was it a really well done mystery with so many defined characters, but then also like enough information where you weren't lost. Like that's one challenging thing of mysteries, and I will say like Orient Express. I remember there's just character after character after character, and it's like I can't hold like I don't know who to keep in my head. Who was just passing by, like who's important, and you know like in a movie, important person walks by. It's usually a famous person. Like someone just walks by really quick, like they're coming back. That was Daniel Craig. Like that was something. And so in this, it's hard to tell. In other mystery books, it's hard to tell what's important. But in this, they had not only a map in the beginning, but there was a list of names. And he had this in he had that in 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle as well. I flipped to this page a ton. Like, just because sometimes you just hear a last name and go by and like, wait, oh, that's the captain. Okay. And it helped. So I wasn't just like reading. It's like, I don't fully understand what I'm having. But like, if there was ever appointments I didn't know, I could kind of check myself. And then the other side of it too is that it had the map. And if you really wanted to go deep on it, by keeping in mind people's bearings better than I layered onto it, you might get it better. But yeah, it's a really good mystery. I just love mystery books, especially in the winter. Super engrossing. Like, yeah, top-notch book. Last book of 2020, funniest book I read all year. Nothing to See Here. Kevin Wilson. Wow, so good. So he wrote a movie he wrote a book that inspired a movie I found very funny recently, and didn't realize that until I read this, and I was like, oh, that's the same man. But Family Fang was a movie, basically just family does like these really macabre pranks out and about, and it was just a sense of humor that was very unique, very sharp, and so this was on it. I'll tell you the plot because it doesn't give away it doesn't give away what happens in the book. This is what the book is about, but it would tell you why it's so hilarious. So as you can see here from the cover, things a little weird in this book. Basically, two friends kind of like boarding school together. One was super rich, one wasn't. The other one gets in trouble, needs the poor girl to take the fall. They split, come back years later and say, hey, I do have a job for you. I'm trying to kind of help out. And she's like, I got these two kids you need to take care of. He's like, a nanny? It's like, yeah, but when they get upset, their skin, it'll turn red, and then a lot of times they'll burst into flames. What happened? Do their clothes burn off? They're fine. We're still figuring it out. Look, it's doctors figuring it out, but just accept it. And it just kind of like rushes on from there. Like, just accept it, move on. That's what you have to handle. And it's just like hilarious. And like, it's so like, I don't know, the wit in it is so sharp, and it's just such a absurd, but then like so much like humanity to still back into it and stuff, and it's so good. But I was on page 6 before the plot even started, and I realized like I'd laughed out loud multiple times. Like, I had to set the book down. I'm laughing that hard. Please, 2020 has been a shitty hard year. Do yourself a favor, laugh, and get this book. Nothing to See Here. Kevin Wilson. You will laugh. You'll love it. I promise. If you don't like it, send me a DM. But that's my best. That's my 2020 roundup. Pete Cal, probably my favorite book in that. In the nonfiction, probably The Body Keeps Score. That kind of hit on everything because like systemic racism is trauma in a way. Women's disadvantage is rolled into that in a way. It just felt like trauma being so universal that was a theme of 2020 I wouldn't have recognized without this book. I think, and that's something that as we go forward, and how do we care for each other, or the people that have been through the worst, like recognizing lessons from that book would really help me, or help all of us. But I do think of like, you know, the people that, like frontline workers that had to go in the hospital every day and just face like, you're probably going to get sick today. You're going to handle it. And like, God, the people that have gotten through the pandemic, you don't just, all right, it's done, keep going. Like, how do we help them? Like, they've gone through massive PTSD. They're seeing more people die in a day than usual by a lot. Like, that's trauma. And I think better understanding how prevalent it is would help form our society in a more caring way. So yeah, 2020, travel was stunted, but could still explore, could still broaden our horizons, still grow worldly and read about fire children and just funny shit if we need it. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for any support. If you're watching at this point, do me a favor. Leave a comment, say, do you want the reviews coming up to have spoilers or no? That would be a super helpful distinction as I'm figuring out how to go with this channel, but I will tell you, the channel is continuing. 2021, more videos, better videos. I might even learn how to edit. Who knows? Thank you for sticking around. I really, really do appreciate it, and I love doing this.